Welcome back to Football Coaching Corner. Today I have Coach Tim Shields. Coach Shields is over at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He coaches the tight ends. He is also the equipment manager. He also manages some of the game day operations, the football operations over there for them. Coach previously spent 3 years over at Washington St. Louis University and has now been worked up to working with the tight ends at Whitewater. So, Coach, welcome on. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career path, that would be great.
Yeah, Tucker, thanks for having me, and kudos to you for putting together what appears to be an awesome little video series or podcast. I don't know what you call it these days.
I don't either.
Yeah, I think for me, what makes my journey maybe a little bit more unique or different than others is I went to law school first before I got into coaching, and it's something that I don't share with a lot of guys in the industry. Obviously, I share the passion for the game and all that. But when I got to college, my goal was to be a high school history teacher, no different than yourself, and coach high school football. And somewhere along the way that changed for me. I think the one thing, guys always hear that I was went to law school and eventually became an attorney. Like they hear like, oh, wow, you must be burned out or whatever. And the truth is, I think anyone that knows me and has known me for, even dating back to, 18 years old, they knew that football consumed me. Football is what I was passionate about, and I think any of my friends, senior year of high school, would tell you that at 33 now, 15 years later, I would be doing something in football. Now, which for me obviously is through time is in what capacity, right? I initially went to law school to be an NFL agent and sort of have a general practice, work with small businesses, do some contract law, some real estate. And I was really fortunate to land an internship while I was in law school with a guy named David Wyatt, who's based out of South Carolina. And David was an awesome mentor for me really quickly in that process. And, through my time working for him, he had four clients. And he basically, I would say he sort of turned the ropes over to me somewhat, and I got basically a crash course in what it was to be an NFL agent. And through that process, I guess fortunately or unfortunately, when you think about the money I have, the debt I've accrued from law school, I realized I didn't necessarily want to do the legal NFL agent path anymore. That I wanted my passion and my passion was still in football. It was still in the game. It was just more team based, and it sort of left me in an interesting place because I was going to sit for the bar exam when I made that decision in about 3 months from there, and that was probably the hardest conversation I ever had with anybody close to me, particularly my mother, who was a huge supporter in my entire life. But I do remember that conversation saying, hey, I know I'm 3 weeks away from graduating. I know I'm 3 weeks away from sitting from the bar exam. But hey, I really think I want to go coach. And that was sort of a difficult time, but I was able to, with her support, with the support of really a great group of people around me, both in and out of the game, I was able to eventually land a job. And I was able to come to that conclusion, honestly, because I was able to coach 2 years in law school. And so I knew I was going to coach at some point in my life. I didn't think it was going to happen at 23 or 24, but it did. And here I am now. Here, like you said, I'm 3 years in at Whitewater as the tight end fullback coach. Work with the offensive tackles and the director of football operations and the recruiting coordinator as well. So it's been a phenomenal path, not a convenient path by any stretch, but it's one that I think is certainly got me ready for where I'm at today.
And I think a lot of us coaches kind of have that same drive in common too. Of maybe you step away from the game for a little bit, but it's always pulling you back. I found I played in high school, played for 9 years total, and then I went to a college that we didn't have football. So being away for 4 years, the second I got my phys ed job, it was what can I do to help? What can I do? And I personally, I was lucky enough to work with a great coach, Coach Anderson, who allowed me to take over the JV program. So just getting back into the game, planning with it, talking with it, anything is just it fills that spot.
Yeah, I can tell you this. There are moments in my mind, like almost aha moments that stick out that really led me to this becoming a career. And the first one was getting on a plane and heading to the NFL Combine. And I had just applied for a job with a bigger agency, and one of the guy, essentially the guy I was going to replace, was on our flight, and he was there with some of the players that they were representing. All of us, we were all going to Indianapolis, and so here I am. I'm kind of observing this intern at the same place I want to go work at. And I've already had my experiences. So, 3 months in with David, and, he just didn't look like he was having that much fun. And I got on the plane, and I walked through first class, and the entire Jacksonville Jaguars organization is there. It's Coach Del Rio and all those guys. And, they're in suits and ties. They're drinking champagne. They're sitting first class. And I was like, it's crazy. It sounds like it sort of was that moment. Like, yeah, the things you've been thinking about, maybe that's true, that the team aspect of this game is really what you're after. And like I said, that was just one of a couple of moments for me that it made it clear that I needed to maybe change the path I was going down.
Yeah. So it seems like you've been on a pretty fast track into coaching. At a pretty young age, you kind of got involved, and then you seem to have taken off from there. What advice would you have for other coaches who are kind of looking to fast track that, get into college coaching, go up the ranks?
Yeah, I say this. I don't have all the answers and wouldn't even begin to claim I do. One of the things for me is I've sort of started a similar project to what you've done, right, in the quarantine for coaches. And that's sort of been a staple question for me, because the one thing I always come back to, and I'm obviously a great example of it, is there's not one set way to do this thing, right? There's not one set path. And I think that's important to know, right? It's important. Some of the things I've been thinking about through this project, I've started to kind of construct those ideas and put those things to paper, those thoughts to paper. And really what I've come up with was maybe a couple bullet points here. And one is know what your goals are. And most importantly, have your network know what your goals are. I think knowing what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in your career, it doesn't have to be necessarily like I got to work at this job for this person per se, but you have to have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe it's you want to be a head coach. Maybe it's you want to be a coordinator. For me, when I got into this thing, I wanted to be in the NFL personnel department, right? So when I got to Wash U in St. Louis and I got to work for Larry Kinbaum, he knew that I wanted to do that, right? So when an NFL scout came to Wash U, I was the guy that got to show the NFL scout around, right? I became essentially this pro liaison, if you will, for our program, right? And he provided me with similar opportunities in my 3 years there because he knew that's what I wanted to do. And I think when you have a goal, you're going to get a purpose, you're going to get some structure, some framework on whatever path you're about to go down, and that's really beneficial to you. But you also need help along the way, and in order to get help, you need to have your network know what your goals are. And some other things I think are, that I found really important is, one, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. One of the best things I did was jump to the defensive side when the job at Wash U came open. I coached 3 years in the defensive line. Before that, I was an offensive lineman. I coached offense the 4 years prior to Wash U, and obviously coached it 3 years since. but that those 3 years were so valuable in learning a new position. You know, you got people so often like, well, I could never coach that position. Well, I looked at it as an opportunity to basically start fresh with brand new eyes and become an expert in something I wasn't. So I arrived at that thing, you know, and was able to build my thought process from the ground up, and I think that's been invaluable to my growth as a coach. And then the last thing I'll leave you with as far as advice for coaches is don't be afraid to create value. You know, as a young coach, when I saw a void in a program, right? Social media, for instance, is something that was common, right? I started coaching in 2012. Twitter was kind of still in its early stages. Instagram, I don't think was even created yet. And I saw a void in the way we would do things at Waldorf University. And so all of a sudden I became the guy that started creating videos and creating graphics for Twitter, running the Facebook account, running the Twitter account. And I'll be honest, I think that really led to my next job because I started tweeting out some of the work I did. And I was by no means an expert in Adobe Photoshop or Final Cut Pro by any stretch. And in fact, I look at some of the stuff I created then, now, and I'm like, man, I wouldn't even put that stuff out, right?
Right.
But I wasn't afraid to jump in and try to fill the void. I wasn't. The other piece of that, I guess, that sort of a subheading or a subpoint to that would be: don't wait until someone asks you to do it. Just go, create it, right? Do it yourself. So, really know what your goals are. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone, and honestly, create value. When there's a void, fill it.
And that's one of the things, you know, I've only been doing this for a short amount of time, but from talking with, you know, the coaches I've talked with, everyone seems to be on the same idea of, you know, don't say no to anything, take all the chances you can, and just be willing to put yourself out there, grow that network, and keep working. So what is some advice you might have for someone who's looking to grow their network? I know with me personally, you said it kind of about filling the void of something that's not out there. I think personally, you know, what I'm trying to do is I see a lot of the Glacier clinics, the Zoom clinics, and it's that, you know, that 1 hour on a Tuesday at 1 p.m. Can you be there or not? And I'm hoping that with here that we can put it on YouTube, everyone knows how to use it, and everyone can check it out whenever they need to. So I guess that's my kind of way of starting the recruiting or process for myself. But do you have any other tips that you would give out to coaches who are looking to grow that network?
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do is be authentic. You know, be authentic, be who you are. I've been around young coaches that are so hell bent on finding the next job and finding the best connection, the best reference, that I don't think they ever really establish meaningful relationships with people. I don't feel like the fake or whatever very surface level relationship they do establish is good enough, because that person doesn't know who you really are. So I think being authentic and sticking to whoever you are is going to be my first recommendation. I mean, certainly there's 1,000 different ways to go about trying to meet people, right? And this is one of them that you're doing, right? And Quarantine with Coaches for me is certainly one of them for me as well. But I think it start with that. Focus on being authentic and being who you are and being real. And I think the one thing I would say is make sure when you are authentic and you start to build those relationships, make sure you strengthen those relationships. You know, make sure that there's a two-way street on value. And as young coaches, you don't necessarily have a lot to offer. Maybe that offensive coordinator at a school that you want to work at eventually. But what you can offer them is just some support. What you can offer them is, a congratulations text, right? An email, a phone call, a letter. Oh, that's a little bit outdated technology, the handwritten letter these days. But those are things I think that are sort of a lost art, because guys want to know, like, oh, how'd you meet this guy? And I get that, but I think the first focus in that process is be authentic, and when you do meet people, focus on strengthening that network. Like, don't just meet somebody and then move on. really try to build and strengthen the network you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you do that, you're going to be provided with opportunities in your career to meet other people. And that's sort of how I did it. I mean, this job right now I'm in, I met Coach Brent Allen, who was at the time at another small D3 school, and he was a Remington Award winner here. And we met at AFCA convention, and that led to, that was, text messaging back and forth for 6 to 8 months or whatever it was, led to a chance to work at camp here, which here at Whitewater, I should say. And that eventually 6 years of working camps led to this opportunity that I'm in now. Right. And that started with a chance meeting at the FCA convention, building that relationship up with Brent, who is one of my closest friends now. And eventually that led to this. So I think that's the start.
I think that's huge too. Just, building authentic relationships, not just building, text relationships or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I know you talked about kind of being on Zoom with your kids. You said you just had about 10 of your tight ends on a Zoom together. What are some ways you're kind of building those authentic relationships and maintaining those relationships while we're all locked down on quarantine?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. I think one is, obviously we're in an unprecedented time, and everyone's trying to figure out that question you just asked.
Right.
I think for me, one of the first benefits I've had is I sort of already had a pretty strong relationship with my group, both with the guys that are coming back and also with the 3 guys that are incoming freshmen. So I've been fortunate to have a strong relationship with that group going into this thing. But I think it's important that you give these guys some individual time, not just a group text,
right,
hey, how you doing, not just a Zoom meeting, hey, how you doing, how's the week going? But I've really focused on trying to get these guys, on the phone, FaceTime individually, just to check in with them once a week. It's tough because you can't read their body language. You can sort of see it, right? But the thing about this situation, and here at Whitewater, we're so focused on our process, our daily rhythm, right, of chasing excellence and setting our standards high. And it's tough to do that when you have a new normal, right? We're really good at building structure in our program for our guys to succeed. And so with this quarantine, obviously that structure was ripped away. And so we're all trying to find what the new normal is for us. And I think just trying to meet these guys where they're at every week, and giving them some individual time. And in that individual time, we're not talking about football. We're catching up on the week's events, what's going on in their life, how their family is handling this situation. And sometimes those phone calls end up with, what Netflix series they're binging, right? Or what TikTok they're going to be working on, or whatever, right? But I think individual time and make sure that individual time is sincere, and it's not necessarily football related. Get to know these guys.
Well, I think you kind of touched on it too. I think a big part of that, is having that culture in place before all this. I think it's pretty hard to build the culture through this. But what are some ways that you guys kind of build a strong culture? It sounds like you already have a great one going. But how would you build a strong culture, face to face once we're in season?
Yeah, culture is like this big thing in college football now, and it's almost trendy to call it the big thing. It's like trendy to call it trendy now. That's where we're at with culture. I think people look at Whitewater and they see a lot of success, and I think sustaining success in football at college, at the NFL level, wherever you're at, is the toughest thing to do. And so if you look at what we've been able to accomplish for the last 20 years, 3 different head coaches have now coached in a national championship game. We've won 6 national championships in whatever the last 13 years or so, right? Everybody wants to know like the magic formula, and I don't know that we have one per se. I would say this: it starts with people, and it starts for us. For us, it's Coach Kevin Bullis our head coach, bringing in great teachers. We have a culture here of learning, and our goal, I think his goal every single day is to create a culture of learning that we can continue to build on every day. And so that's where it starts for us. I think you kind of touched on it as well. Like, to bring in great teachers, right, is the first step. The second part is, the best teachers have established relationships with their players, right? We just sort of just talked about it. I was listening to Nick Eason talk. Nick was the Tennessee Titans D-line coach at the time. He's with the Bengals now. He was midway through his time at Tennessee. And Nick's been was a 10-year veteran and been to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. And if there's anybody that can walk into a position room and say, hey, listen to me, I've been there, it'd been that guy, right?
Right.
And he said something to me that was pretty profound. And he said that, no matter where you're at, no matter what level, they won't care about what you know until they know you care about them, right?
Right.
So when you invest in that personal success, that individual success, that's really where the relationship takes off, and that's where the student strives, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean we're all fluffy like sunshine and rainbows here, but what it does mean is we're real, and right. And so when you're real, and I've sort of touched on that earlier, but when you're real, that's when you can handle the difficult conversations, right? But that's sort of where we start, right? Is getting great teachers in who can obviously teach really well and also recruit really well. Mm-hmm. But our culture here, I think, is ultimately, you talk about culture, it's really a set of behaviors, right? That can hold people accountable, right, and to the standards that they set. And for us, that means every day we are focused on our daily improvement and our daily excellence. And one thing we do is try to get better 1% every day in every facet of a student athlete's life, right? So what that means, obviously, 1% in their academic, right, pursuit of a graduation track, right? 1% as a football player, 1% as a boyfriend, a friend, a son, a brother, right? That's our goal. And we're not, we're able to put aside our path. We're able to not look ahead. We're able to be present, be sort of where our feet are at, and chase that 1% every day. And I think that is really maybe what separates us, because there's been plenty of times in the last 20 years that a team could come in at the start of fall camp and say, well, we're going to win the conference and we're going to go to the championship, and that's going to be our focus all year. That's not the case here. We're focused on our daily improvement, our daily pursuit of excellence, and really just focused on trying to win the WIC year in and year out.
No, I think that's awesome. Talking about building the 1% off the field too. So one last question I got before we kind of start wrapping up. My last thing, you kind of touched on a little bit, that commitment to getting better every single day. But what are some other like intangible skills you're looking for in some of the guys you're recruiting, or some leaders you're looking to have on the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really easy to get enamored with tape these days. I mean, it's so accessible. Kids are sliding into my DMs all the time and take a look at my huddle tape, please, please, please. And really, our process in recruiting starts with an idea that we're going to get those guys on our campus. We're going to get in front of them. They're going to get in front of us. We're going to start building that relationship. There's not a guy on our camp that in our incoming class this year that hasn't been on our campus, okay, that we haven't had a conversation with their high school coach, and we don't have some type of relationship with that person. So that's sort of where it starts for us. I heard Larry Kinbaum said this, and it's always stuck with me. Good football teams need good players. Great football teams need great people. Mm-hmm. And that's been really has stuck with me and sort of spearheads what I do in recruiting. I try to find guys with high character because this is not, I'll tell you, this is not a place that you're going to be able to play right away a lot of times, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm recruiting really good football players, some of them which are turning down scholarship offers to come to Whitewater where we are non-scholarship. Mm-hmm. And it would be easy for them to come in here with an ego, not play right away, shut down, and then leave, right? And we've been fortunate enough that we've been able to sort of check that by essentially bringing in guys with high character that are really focused again on our process and that daily pursuit, 1% goal of getting better. And I'll leave you with this. Our mantra here is powered by tradition, right? And so you can't be powered by tradition if you're constantly having guys leave your program, right? So a big part of our success is the fact that our guys, the guys in the room right now at the tight end room, are invested in not only who we bring in, but once we bring them in, their growth, right? And we do a really good job, I think, here of cultivating leadership. A big thing for us in leadership is teach, encourage, and challenge. And we really put it, we really put it on our upperclassmen and to bring these guys along. And you can't do that unless you're starting with a good foundation, a good character base, and hopefully, like I said, that has been identified early in the recruiting process before they ever become a Warhawk.
I love that mantra you guys go by too. That's awesome. So, Coach, kind of wrapping up, the last thing I want to end all my talks with all my coaches is kind of my 3 tips that I have. So what is one tip that you would give? We already kind of talked about it a little bit as far as just don't say no to anything. But what is one tip, maybe your biggest tip, that you would give to a young coach?
Yeah, I think I said it already. Get out of your comfort zone and don't be afraid to create value. And like I said before, like I did not know how to Photoshop, right? But I got my second job in college football because, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think a big part of it was because of the content I started producing on social media. And in 6 months or even less than that, probably 6 weeks before that, I had no idea what the hell I was doing in that sense. So don't be afraid. There's YouTube out there, right? They'll teach you how to do pretty much anything. So go ahead and create value for yourself. And I think the more value you have, the better off you're going to be.
Awesome. So I know a lot of the times when we talk to players, obviously we want the best for our players at all times, but sometimes that information goes in one ear out the other. If you could get into that brain of one of your players, what is one piece of advice you'd want them to hear?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, all good.
Coach Lawhorn was on the show yesterday, and I thought he sort of nailed it. Essentially, control what you can control. I played for a guy named Aaron Keene, who was a phenomenal young head coach then, is going to be a phenomenal head coach at WashU in St. Louis. And he said that a lot to us: control the controllable. Come to find out, after playing for Aaron and then going to work for his college coach at WashU and Larry Kinbaum, that was actually coming from Coach K oftentimes. But I won't steal his Coach Lawhorn's idea. I really thought that was valuable and controllable. But what I would say is this, and this has been a big message since Coach Jennings became our offensive coordinator at Whitewater, and that is have fun. Football is a very taxing sport. For us this year, it was literally a 16-week grind that saw us go to the national championship game. Even as a player, I'll tell you this, and now as a coach, it stays the same. Physically, mentally, emotionally, this game can be really taxing. And I think whether you're having a lot of success or you're not having a lot of success, you sort of lose sight of that, the process and enjoying the process. I think there's been times here, I know I've been guilty of it, is we don't enjoy wins sometimes, right? We didn't execute as well as we hoped. So all of a sudden, Saturday night after the game, I'm more focused on that. And I think as a player, it's no different, right? Maybe you're a guy that's trying to be a starter and you're not a starter, or your role's not as big as you want. So now you're focused on that. And all of a sudden, you're 7 games into the season's almost done, and you haven't really enjoyed any of it, right? And you put a lot on the line, physically, mentally, emotionally. And for you not to enjoy it, for you not to have fun, I think is sort of a waste. So have fun is really the one like I said, Coach Lawhorn, was a great one yesterday. Control the controllable. I would say mine would be a reminder to have fun.
No, that's great. That's why we're all in it, right?
Right. No doubt.
So then the last tip I'll wrap up with is, what is one tip that you wish you heard, when you started coaching? One thing you wish somebody told you?
Yeah, that's a great question. You've done a great job, by the way, Tucker.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate you having me on. The one thing I would say is surround yourself with great people. I have like my own, I guess, personal mantra, which has sort of been like work hard, pray harder, and surround yourself with good people. And fortunately for me, that last part, to surround yourself with good people, football really provided that for me at an early age. I think, right now, I think I've been a groomsman in 11 weddings, and 10 of those weddings were guys I played football with.
Absolutely.
What I mean? And those guys, whether they're my buddies from high school or my buddies from college, those guys have turned out to be not only great in the profession, whether it's a doctor or a lawyer. One friend did 3 tours on the Afghanistan and Iraq, accountants, whatever they're doing, they're really good at it. And so I've sort of been able to see that and have that carry over to me. And they're great fathers, and they really are guys that I look up to now. And that's been awesome to have that support system of people around you. And, I can't really say enough about having that group to help sort of mold you, build you. There's something I heard in this Quarantine with Coaches piece is, you basically are the 5 people you surround yourself with, right? And so I think surrounding yourself with good people is the one thing, whether you're a young person, trying to make it, whether you're a young coach, whether you're a college player, a student athlete, right? Surround yourself with good people, and I think good things will happen for you.
Awesome. No, I agree wholeheartedly with that. So, Coach, just wrapping up, I don't know if you want to talk about Quarantine with Coaches a little bit, but one thing that I'm trying to do every time I talk is trying to get back to the coaches who spend some time talking with me. So I don't know if you want to spend a little time talking about #Quarantine with Coaches. Yeah. I think it'd be awesome if you'd share.
Yeah, it's just a little project, sort of like you're doing, man. And like you said, I can't say enough about you. I think one thing that I've learned from Coach Kinbaum is sort of, we all have a responsibility to move this game forward. And one of the ways to do that is sort of take care of the coaches behind you that are following you. And I got to thinking, 2 days into this quarantine, I remember clearly, I was like on day 2 of my 6th hour of a power talk that, we run A-gap power here, and I think we do really well. And this was a C-gap power. We're not going to run C-gap power. And I was in hour 6 of a clinic talk, and I'm like, this is valuable. I love learning, but we're not going to use it, And I started to think, how can I make the most of my time in quarantine? And I came up with, I guess, the idea to start creating content that sort of football related, but so far it's been pretty football related, on building great cultures, cultivating great leaders, and sort of that, career building. Those are 3 topics I think you go to a clinic, they're not heavily discussed, and they're really, really important. And so I've started reaching out to guys I knew, and fortunately for us now, I just had my 3rd MAC head coach on yesterday. That Coach Leopold will be on next week, and these guys are sharing valuable stuff. And here's the thing I would say, Tugger. One of the goals for me was not only to create that content, but to give a platform, sort of like you were doing for me, right? Give a platform for guys that I know are great coaches that maybe don't have that platform. I've had guys like Connor Singer, who was our running backs coach here last year, who's now the quality control coach at North Dakota State. I think he's as good as they get as a 25-year-old in this game. And he certainly has shown it. Nick Peshek is a guy that I worked with here, who's now at the OC at University of Wisconsin Stout. Another really great coach, and Brady Grable at St. Thomas, Tony Schiffman at Lake Forest. Rob Erickson at South Dakota State. And some guys, all these guys, right? They don't necessarily have the platform. And I wanted those guys. I know they're great coaches. I know they have a lot to say. So I sort of wanted to provide them with a platform as well. And so those two goals have so far in the first month, I guess, if you will, of the project, it's gone really well. And it's you can find it at Twitter. I'm Coach T Shields on Twitter. We tweeted out it's hashtag quarantined with coaches. And if you're searching on YouTube, you can find it there as well.
Awesome. Well, Coach Shields, you definitely got a fan forever in me. I hope to keep in touch as this quarantine goes on. I wish you best of luck with quarantine coaches. Best of luck this upcoming season, and best wishes for health and a healthy year coming up for you and your family.
Tucker, I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. Keep in touch.
Yep. Thanks.
Have a good one.